Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to share a little bit about the Nichiren Buddhism practice. And I'm going to be reading several quotes from the writings of Nichiren Daishonin. The book is called the Go-Sho, Go meaning great and Sho meaning writings. These are actual letters that Nichiren Daishonin wrote to his followers back in the 13th century. So as it relates to the environment, Nichiren writes, if the minds of living beings are impure, their land is also impure. But if their minds are pure, so is their land. There are not two lands, pure or impure in themselves. The difference lies solely in the good or evil of our minds. It is the same with a Buddha and an ordinary being. When deluded, one is called an ordinary being, but when enlightened, one is called a Buddha. This is similar to a tarnished mirror that will shine like a jewel when polished. A mind now clouded by the illusions of the innate darkness of life is like a tarnished mirror, but when polished, it is sure to become like a clear mirror, reflecting the essential nature of phenomena and the true aspect of reality. Arouse deep faith and diligently polish your mirror day and night. How should you polish it? Only by chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. So Buddhism teaches that the environment, in fact the entire universe, is a causal-based universe. In other words, everything is based on cause and effect. So like Nichiren said in this quote, when our minds are impure, we will create pollution. We will create destruction. We will create devastation. But when our minds are pure or enlightened, then we create things that are beneficial to all people. Part of the Buddhist practice is the practice of the Bodhisattva, which is a person who has dedicated themselves to the happiness of all beings. So in this Bodhisattva state, we not only just look at, well, what's good for me? We think about, well, how will my actions also affect other people? So we make decisions, hopefully, based on the consequence of what it will mean to not only me, but also everyone else. Another quote from Nichiren says that life at each moment encompasses the body and mind, and the self and environment of all sentient beings in the 10 worlds, as well as all insentient beings in the 3,000 realms, including plants, sky, earth, and even the minutest particles of dust. So Buddhism postulates that the living beings and the environment are inseparable. That, in fact, it states that there can be no living being without an environment in which it lives. And there can be no environment that doesn't have living beings. So, you know, this concept, when we look around, we see people, we all look different, although we have similar features, but we have, our minds are different. At this moment in time, each one of us is probably thinking something different other than listening to what I'm saying. So this difference and similarity exists at the same time. It's a Buddhist term called Esho Funi. Esho meaning two but not two, and Funi meaning the man and in the environment. So this term, Esho Funi, makes it so that everything that we experience in our environment was created by us. Our mind sees what the state of that mind thinks it should see. In other words, if you are in a bad mood, if you're experiencing what we call the life condition of hell, then everything looks like hell. Even somebody makes a comment to you, oh, you look nice in it. What do you mean by that? You know, there's ways that when we're in hellish life conditions that we experience hell and we also create it. When we're in a happier life condition, even if someone says something negative to us, we say, oh, thank you, that was so nice of you. So the mind that we are in determines everything, determines our experience of life. We can, let's just take pollution. Say there's a company that's polluting a river. To the person or the people that own that company, they think this is great. We're providing jobs, we're making lots of money, we're creating a product that people want to buy. But the people that are living downriver that have to drink that water, or they like to go fishing or swimming in it, they're thinking, why is this guy, why do they do that? Why do they pollute the river? So both sides have valid points. So how do we arrive at a solution? The solution comes from being able to look at the situation and have dialogue and discuss an outcome. Now, granted, taking bricks and fire bombs and throwing it at the company probably won't change them. But there are ways that we can communicate, have dialogue, and perhaps even inspire that company to find more, less polluting ways of doing their business. So there are ways to have an effect. But our mind has to be correct in order to have that effect. If there's no way that we're going to create a peaceful situation by fighting. So I wanted to just share a couple more quotes from Nietzsche before we get out of here. Nietzsche says that the threefold world will become the Buddha land, and how could a Buddha land ever decline? The regions in the 10 directions will all become treasure realms, and how could a treasure realm ever suffer harm? If you live in a country that knows no decline or diminution, in a land that suffers no harm or disruption, then your body will find peace and security, and your mind will be calm and untroubled. Life at each moment encompasses the body and the mind and the self and environment of all sentient beings of the 10 worlds. So, Buddhism teaches that when we practice and chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, it stimulates and activates our highest life condition, and from that, we can make the best decisions for our own lives and how it will impact other people. So this is what we practice every day, chanting this phrase, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and we do this to elevate our life condition so that we can be the best people that we can possibly be. Thank you.
My name is Guaspari. I am representing pagan spirituality. I am a witch. Mind you, not every pagan is a witch. Pagan is an umbrella term. I just want to say that I'm thankful to everyone in this room for being willing to open their hearts and minds to learn, share, and respect others' form of spirituality. There needs to be more people in this world like you all here this evening. Imagine all of us putting down our armor. This world would be a much better place to live in. How many of you do not understand or fear this symbol? This is the pentagram. And with some thanks to our friends in Hollywood, this does not conjure Chucky. Nor does it cause the medieval horror or us witches to go crazy and put bad spells on innocent little children. This is one of the most misused and misunderstood symbols out there. The pentagram is one of the oldest spiritual symbols known to man. It was used long before the sign of the cross as a sign of protection. Each point has a meaning: earth, water, fire, air, and the top point is spirit. The circle surrounding the five-pointed star represents connection with the universe, which is immanent, meaning present within. Our very own beloved symbol of protection really is nature-based. The topic of this evening is one I personally find comfort in, as do most pagans. To put it more simply, pagans are nature lovers. Paganism is first and foremost in nature spirituality because pagans regard nature as a manifestation of spirit. Many pagans see spirit as having both a physical and a spiritual dimension, just as humans have a body and soul. Paganism doesn't have a written canonized scripture in the traditional sense. Instead, pagans draw their lessons from nature. To paraphrase an old quote, if you take a book and put it out in the wind and rain, soon the paper on which the words are printed will disintegrate and the words will be gone. Our book is the wind and the rain. Paganism acknowledges that the divine is within us and around us, and that interaction with our physical world puts us in contact with the divine. Pagans believe that the earth and everything on it is sacred, from the greatest mountains to the smallest of particles. They are sacred because Goddess and God created them and is part of them. Goddess and God created the balance of all things and are immanent in the cosmos. When deity is acknowledged as immanent, what follows is respect for the sacredness of all living things. Paganism is a religion of ecology. Its goal is harmony with nature so that life may not just survive, but thrive. Pagans go outdoors to feel closer to the divine, to seek mystical wisdom, and to experience in union with the sacred. It is outside of human society and within the timeless cycles of nature and of life that one can grasp that which is larger than us all. It is within the embrace of nature's rhythms that pagans are freed from preoccupation with the perpetual calculation that powers our society that teaches us the price of everything and the value of nothing. It is within nature that pagans most easily encounter a reality far greater than human plans and aspirations. In nature, socially derived preconceptions, judgments, and prejudices fall by the wayside because they are not constantly reinforced by encounters with others in a similar frame of mind. Spirit in nature reaches out through beauty, peace, and the openness of heart it evokes within us. Nature is not some lifeless inert stage on which we lead our lives. It is sacred. Ancient people's daily existence was tied directly to the well-being of the earth. Today, that connection with the earth has been lost. Paganism teaches a way of reconnecting to the earth and to nature in many ways, such as we understand that we are servants and protectors of the earth. Pagans draw energy from the earth and infuse our energy back into her so we can draw from it later. Pagans understand that the earth is our womb. Pagans strive to be guardians of the earth's energy. We celebrate the earth. We open ourselves to the power of a rainstorm and the warmth of the sun. We dance to the pulse of the earth, and we rejoice at the changing of the seasons. Celebrating earth means allowing ourselves to be overwhelmed by nature. Celebrating the earth means that we are earth's children and taking an active role in aligning our spiritual life with caring for the earth. It also requires taking the time and making the difference to commune with our environment, no matter how far removed from it we have become. Most directly, pagans observe, honor, and celebrate her different faces in the changing of the season. The shifts of the seasons are marked by the turning of the wheel. From nature comes many lessons. Silence is powerful. Everything moves in a cycle, day and night, high tide and low tide, summer and winter. The earth is abundant. We already have plenty of what really matters. Life doesn't move in a straight line, it moves in a circle. An ecosystem needs a wide variety of plants, animals, weather patterns, and soil conditions to remain healthy. Diversity in nature is vital, as well as diversity in the human family. Beauty matters. We need to cultivate the beauty in our own lives. When you spend time in nature on a regular basis, you learn not only about the world, but about yourself. You are a part of nature too. In conclusion, paganism is the most ancient nature-based religious tradition. It is root religion, meaning the ancient and prehistoric basis of all religion. All modern religions are either additions to or reactions from this root. In almost all religions, their most profound events occurred outdoors in nature. Buddha achieved enlightenment under a tree. Moses heard God in a burning bush. Jesus preached his most famous sermon on a mountain. Muhammad underwent his most profound mystical experience in a cave. People in the 21st century are now recognizing the desecration of our planet, which now possesses our greatest challenge to humanity. We all need to provide a path for the healing of our Mother Earth. As you all walk out of this building tonight, look amongst your surroundings, see the beauty that shows us all that spirit is alive in every living thing. Remember that in nature, all living things serve their purpose. So before you kill that bee out of fear that you may get stung and experience a moment of pain, think of this. If it weren't for the bees, we wouldn't be here. Blessings.
So there's a story which is probably told in more than just the Jewish culture. The way it's usually told is that there's this man, Joseph, and he lives in maybe 18th or 19th century in Eastern Europe. And he has this wonderful flowing overcoat that he uses over many years, and eventually the overcoat runs out. It basically gets worn out. He's worn it for so long. And so he sits down in his house, he makes the long flowing overcoat into a jacket. After a while, the jacket wears out, and so he makes it into a vest, and then that wears out, so he makes it into a scarf, and then eventually into a handkerchief, and finally he makes the last piece of cloth he has into a button, and then he loses the button, and so he sits down and writes the story of the overcoat. Now, of course, the whole idea of the story is to show that you never waste anything. Even however small it is, however seemingly insignificant it is, you never waste anything. On one level, it comes out from an Eastern European Jewish sensibility, which is we're a minority, we never know where our next meal is coming from, we're worried about the people around us and how they might treat us, and so always save everything you have because you never know when you might need it. But of course, this idea of not wasting something, in Hebrew, bal tachshit, do not wantonly destroy, do not waste, comes from a much earlier period in Jewish existence. It comes from the end of the book of Deuteronomy, in the Torah, in the 5 books of Moses, and from a completely different setting to the one I just started with. So you have to imagine that you're part of a Jewish army, okay? You've got your sword, right? Maybe a spear, a shield, a helmet. You brought your helmet, right? And you're on the way to lay siege to a city. You're trying to take over this city. And the Torah tells us an incredibly important rule, which is when you're approaching the city, then you might actually cut down some of the trees. And you might use them for wood, you might use them to make weapons, but then you can't cut down the fruit trees. That's the one thing you can't do. So even in the midst of war, you can't wantonly destroy the source of your food. Because even in the midst of war, in the heat of battle, you have to understand that you have to come out the other end. There has to be society at the end. Someone is going to be left standing. And so you shouldn't wantonly destroy the basis of human living. You should absolutely keep it precious so that when the dust has cleared, then life can go on. And this, of course, bal tachshit, this concept of not wantonly destroying, the rabbis have to make it concrete because it's a lofty principle. So how does it apply to everyday life? And they take this idea of not destroying fruit trees on the way to making a siege of a city, and they expand it. So they say, don't, not only trees, but whoever breaks vessels, tears clothing, or wrecks that which is built up, stops fountains, or wastes food in a destructive manner, transgresses the commandment of bal tachshit, of do not destroy. And then the principle of do not destroy is widened out in a completely different way. We're told this is the way of the pious. They who love peace are happy when they can do good to others, bring them close to Torah, to Jewish learning, and will not cause even a grain of mustard to be lost from the world, who will not cause even a grain of mustard to be lost from the world. So that's not just not wantingly destroying even a grain of mustard. It's not just a comment on your environmental, ecological principles, but it's also a comment on your character as a person in general. It's a comment on your ethics, your morality, and your way in life. The other thing that we have to understand, another Jewish principle which completely interacts with the idea of not wantingly destroying, is the rabbis tell us every single thing in the world has a purpose. So they tell stories of how the spider has a purpose, how the gnat has a purpose, how the seemingly most insignificant beings or organisms, everyone has a purpose. purpose. So if every single aspect of the universe has a purpose, then clearly it interacts with the idea of not wantonly destroying it. Because if you destroy even a small aspect of God's universe, then you're destroying something which, even though you don't realise it, is absolutely vital for the working of the cosmos. I've got two stories to tell you, and they really help understand and expand on the idea of not wantonly destroying, because ultimately it's about not only caring about the moment you're standing here, but you have to have a sense of eternity when you're thinking about ecology or the environment. So there's a story, a man called Honi, he comes up in all kinds of rabbinic texts for using him to teach certain important principles. So he's walking along and he sees an incredibly elderly man planting a tree, a carob tree. And he says to the man, so listen, how long would it take for this tree to bear fruit? The man says, well, it'll take about 70 years. And Honi says, that's ridiculous. I'm paraphrasing, okay? You're not going to be around. He's really not subtle, Honi. You're not going to be around when it bears fruit. So how's that going to work? The elderly man says, that's really not a problem. I've been enjoying all my life the fruit of the trees that people planted for me, and so I want to do the same for the next generation. And so you have to have this sense of eternity and this idea of eternity when you're talking about Jewish ecology. And the other story from the rabbinic interpretations, when God created the first human being, God led them around the Garden of Eden and said, look at my works, see how beautiful they are, how excellent. For your sake I created them all. See to it that you do not spoil and destroy my world, for if you do, there'll be no one else to repair it. Okay? So imagine God as a tour guide around the Garden of Eden, showing people how glorious his works are, and to keep them for the next generation. So even in a situation of war, something has to be left over. When anything in the universe, even if you don't understand why it was created, it's there for a purpose. We have to conserve it. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. What a wonderful time to be here. I represent the Lutheran Christian tradition and how this relates to the earth, our environment. At the base of what we understand in our creedal system in Christianity is that one of the things we notice about God is that God is a creator. So that everything that we see, everything that's around here, in our earth, in our solar system, and so forth, we look at as God created it. We also take the biblical images that God blesses the creation, and God does something kind of unique in the scriptures. He looks at the work that God has created and calls it good. You know how first day it was good, second day it was good. Well, so the earth then is good. Humanity is, from our religious tradition I'm talking about, humanity is intimately related to all the rest of creation. Precisely because not only is the earth created by God, but we understand that we are created by God too. Everybody. The whole globe. Everybody that's here, all 7 billion of us, or however many there are. We understand it as creation. So there's this kind of knitting together of, not only of earth, but also of people to people. And then it's this earth, of course, that sustains us. We are called to care for the earth because God cares for it. It's a creation that God looked at and said, it is good. So our job is to care for this earth. I love the images in the Old Testament, especially in the book of Genesis, where it talks about God. I never thought of God as a tour guide, but that's really very good. About leading Adam and Eve around saying, look at all, this is all very good. Well, we still look at it and we still say it's very, very good. And there's a certain sense in there in the scriptures where he leads the human beings that he's created. And God says to them, have dominion over it and subdue it. And I think what happens is sometimes that's taken a little bit too far, And because I don't think that dominion and subdue necessarily mean dominate and exploit. So I think the heart of what God meant about being an overseer, being caring for it, maybe we've taken a little bit too far. We are to keep God's garden, if you will. We are given this wonderful place to live in. And part of our responsibility is to keep it. And that also has to do not only with just the earth, but I mean the whole biosphere in which we live. We've got all kinds of problems we know as far as, I remember, I'm thinking very much, I appreciate Henry Ford, you know, the old Henry Ford, you know, the first Henry Ford, who is getting these Model A's off this, you know, I don't think he ever thought that there would be the number of cars on the road that there is today. And so so you do these things for the sake of progress, and what happens is sometimes there's consequences that you don't know about, that you're not foreseeing. But in our tradition, one of the things that we're called to do is to, if you see something that's gone wrong, is we have a word called repentance. That means to kind of change your mind, turn around, and undo some of the things if you can undo some of the things. So, and we were working that, I guess. I think most communities are saying, boy, we ought to recycle, we ought to, all of these things make a huge difference. That's a part of our responsibility because God called this earth good. It's a gift to us. The next thing I want to leave you with, or think about with you, is this notion in our tradition that I come from, we think of everything that we have as a gift from God. The earth is a gift from God. The breath in my lungs is a gift from God. My children are a gift from God. My 6 grandchildren are a gift from God. Few of them notwithstanding, they're still gifts from God. And they're all gifts, you know, and not only that, and I think in terms of everything that we have, even the paycheck I receive from my congregation is a gift from God. And our belief is that it all belongs to God, including this earth. So, if it's a gift that God has given us, if this whole earth, this biosphere in which we live is a gift, then imagine yourself receiving a very precious gift from somebody that you love very much. How would you treat it? You wouldn't just throw it away. You know what I mean? It calls for a certain response. It calls for a certain, and one might say even responsibility toward it because it's such a precious gift. And so that's kind of how we understand this. We also believe that we need to, in this whole repentance thing, you have to change the way you do things. You know, you have to change the way cars are made. That's all a part of what God would call us to do. It may seem like a very secular thing, but I believe that God is in everything, and so I have a hard time separating what's secular and what's sacred. You cannot have a relentless consumption of the earth. I think even if I remember my Old Testament correctly, that there's even this idea of a sabbatical year and Jubilee year. You can't relentlessly keep getting from the land over and over and over to heighten productivity just for yourself. You got to give it a rest. Well, you know, that's why taking a Sabbath day for yourself is really a wonderful thing. So all of this is to say that it's a gift that God gives us. How would you respond to a wonderful gift that God has given you? And that's kind of how we approach it. I have more time, don't I?
You have a minute.
Wow. Then let me go on also with this whole idea. Now I still have a minute. Very good, very good. I like that the other concept that's very important to us in the Lutheran Church, at least in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, which I represent, is the notion of justice. That has to do with the earth. That is justice in this way, that it's not only an earth to me, but it's me to my neighbor. And justice would mean something like this. If I sit there with plenty of food on my plate, but my neighbor, who's very close to me, has nothing, it's incumbent upon me to share. That's what God wants me to do. That is no question. It's a no-brainer. I mean, who can't figure that out? I mean, as much as we want to acquire wealth, as much as we want to be successful, that's all fine and dandy, but the deal is that you share. That's what God calls us to do, and that's also a part of you share land also. You know, you share land. You share resources. with people. I know I have relatives on the East Coast who have been going through this awfully difficult time, and people are sharing like they've never shared before. It's kind of a beautiful thing. You know, it's a terrible thing to have happen, but I think it's still incumbent upon us as we share, because all that we have is a gift. So I'll end there.
Good evening, friends. I am very, very honored to be the minister of the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Las Vegas and delighted to be here with you this evening. I want to thank you, Alita, for organizing these opportunities for us to share and learn from each other. And thank you, Rabbi Cohen and Temple Sinai, for welcoming us into your home. We Unitarian Universalists claim ourselves as a covenantal rather than a creedal faith. We welcome and embrace those of varied theological groundings, asking not that each believes what everyone else believes, but that we covenant together, we promise each other to walk together in the bonds of love and in the service of building the beloved community here on this earth. The members of my congregation draw inspiration and challenge for their spiritual journeys from Christianity, from Judaism, from paganism, secular humanism, religious naturalism, Buddhism, and many other faith traditions. And many, especially our younger members, identify just as Unitarian Universalists. Now, because of this, you need to understand that what I'm sharing with you this evening are general principles on which we Unitarian Universalists tend to agree. I cannot, in all honesty, say all Unitarian Universalists believe with any credibility or integrity. They laugh. See? I have to say that or I get in trouble. Whatever the grounding of our journey, there are principles, though, around which we have agreed to shape our common life and through which we wish to make our impact on the world. These principles have grown out of our history of resisting and questioning religious dogma, a history that theologically parallels the history of the mainline Christian church and its arguments over the nature and scope of Jesus' divinity and over the use of reason in religion, our Unitarian roots, and to questions about a loving God's plan for us in the afterlife, our Universalist roots. We also claim 19th century transcendentalism and early 20th century humanism as deep and profound influences on our evolving thinking and action. Now, after the merger of our Unitarian and Universalist forebears in the early 1960s, we worked to develop principles to which we could all commit our common life as congregations and as a larger denomination. The reason and individualism of our forebears was tempered and enriched, I think, in the 1970s and 80s, as our understanding of ourselves and our place in the world was broadened by the growing influence of religious women in our midst and the worldview brought to us by the growing number of pagans who were finding a home in our congregations. The principles we have developed together are, in essence, centered around two notions grounded in that history. First, that we must be able to, and we must be challenged to use reason in our religion. That the individual conscience and the understandings of science are crucial in the development of our spiritual lives. And second, that we are inextricably linked to all other life on the planet, human and non-human, bound together in an interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. So what of ecology and the environment? Because we deeply value the findings of science, our understanding of ecology and our place in the environment has changed and grown over time. Unitarians and Universalists, for example, were among the first to explicitly accept and embrace the writings of Charles Darwin and the theory of evolution that grew out of those writings. Because of our commitment to scientific understanding, we know ourselves to be evolving beings ourselves, with a history and a biology that ties us to all of life. We know that as participants and members of the ecologies in which we live, that we have an impact, individually and collectively, an impact on the life around us and on the ability of the environment to sustain healthy, thriving communities of all kinds. We believe that our understanding that we are interdependent with all of life places upon us a responsibility to manage that impact in the service of the thriving of all of life. We look at the devastation wrought by events like Superstorm Sandy this past week, and we know that we are called to respond to the immediate needs of our fellow humans. But we also know that the way we live our lives on this planet has a profound impact on the severity and frequency of such events. We watch the ice caps melting and the temperatures rising with droughts and severe winters, and we know the way that we live our lives, the way that we travel, the way that we shop, the way that we eat, the way that we build, all of this has a massive impact on our planetary environment. I spoke to my congregation this morning about our great 20th century theologian and minister James Luther Adams, who wrote, "All social action is explicitly or implicitly grounded in a theology, and all theology implies a fundamental conception of social action." Our commitment, our intellectual and emotional and religious commitment to understanding that we are a functional part of this interdependent web demands of us that we act individually and collectively here, now, in this place, on this earth, in ways that enhance and support the thriving of life. All life, humans, animals, plants, and the environments that support them. In the words of our Unitarian Universalist theologian Rebecca Parker, we are called to choose to bless the world. This is the work that our deepest religious commitments call us to, guided by our hearts, strengthened and challenged by our reason, and enriched and empowered by our coming together in community. This is what we believe we are called to make our life's work. Thank you.